What's good, motherfuckers? Welcome to yet another movie mass. I am your host, the Bishop of Bull Moose, J Dog. What is good? Thank you guys for clicking this video. I was originally going to talk about this film in a short list of films that I recommend you watch in the month of May, but it turns out I have a lot to say about this particular film. And so I want to talk about it exclusively in its own video because I'm probably going to go on too long about this particular movie. I'm here to yap about Up the Creek from 1984. Now, I would call this film a guilty pleasure, except that I can feel neither guilt nor shame. I'm about no shame in my game. There is nothing that makes me feel guilty or ashamed. So instead, I wear my love for Up the Creek on my sleeve openly, proudly. I regrettably did not grow up watching this film, possibly one of my only regrets, right? I just said I don't feel shame or guilt or whatever, but I do have a regret, one that I'll take with me to my dying day, and that is that I did not grow up watching Up the Creek. I can only imagine how awesome my childhood would have been, how much money I would have saved on therapy if I had not neglected this film for so much of my life. Honestly, I didn't know it existed until pretty recently. So there's that. I'll just say that Up the Creek is a hidden gem. In film, as in music, there are hits that stand out for the ages. For example, Everywhere, which was a huge hit for Fleetwood Mac in the 80s, I think 1988, that dropped from their album Tango in the Night. Christine McVie wrote Everywhere and was the vocal performer for that track. And it's criminal that Stevie Nicks is the only person anyone thinks about when they talk about Fleetwood Mac. Fuck Stevie Nicks. Christine McVie is the goddamn MVP of Fleetwood Mac. Everywhere is a goddamn bop thanks to Christine McVie and Lindsey Buckingham producing that thing. You guys forget Stevie Nicks gets all the fucking attention and all the credit, but meanwhile, Lindsey Buckingham took a lot of attention too. That guy's a wacko. But at any rate, Christine McVie is over here like, wait a minute, I made this whole fucking song great. Anyway, back to my point. For every track like Everywhere, which did gangbusters, still gets played today, you have another track like Isn't It Midnight, also written by Christine McVie, also from the album Tango in the Night. Everybody looks over here at Everywhere, not looking over here at Isn't It Midnight. Isn't It Midnight slaps like a motherfucker too, but you wouldn't know that unless you were mildly obsessed with Tango in the Night like I am, because radio stations don't play Isn't It Midnight. They play the fuck out of Everywhere. The top 1% of genius motherfuckers watching this video right now will agree with me because they're familiar with Isn't It Midnight. The rest of y'all, if you're smart, are going to go search for Isn't It Midnight on Spotify, and you can fucking thank me later for introducing you to what in some alternate universe was just as big a hit as Everywhere, because Isn't It Midnight is an excellent fucking song. Go check it out. And here in our reality, in this particular universe that we inhabit, Isn't It Midnight is the definition of a deep cut. It's an excellent song. It's as good as the ones that you've heard a million times over because your mom has been playing the classic rock station for the past 30 years. And just about now, you're screwing up your face at me. And you're saying some shit like, weren't you talking about a movie, you dumb shit? Why are you on a tangent about Christine McVie, you dumb fuck? It is really just to say that Up the Creek is a much better movie than it gets credit for. Up the Creek is a veritable deep cut of 1980s comedy. It is remarkable how little there seems to be out there in the world on YouTube, the internet, etc., about Up the Creek. I spent some time on YouTube looking to see what other reviewers were going to say about this movie. This isn't really a review. This is more of like an appreciation video. I am just absolutely slobbing Up the Creek's knob. So let's not get this confused with an actual fucking review. I'm just here to tell you how fucking awesome this movie is and threaten to slap you on the mouth if you don't go check it out. So even with the Blu-ray that Kino Lorber released 9 fucking years ago, I really don't see people talk about Up the Creek at all. So this is like, I'm calling it right now. It's official 80s deep cut, where most people will mention that upper tier of the most recognizable 80s comedies, shit like Ghostbusters, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Back to the Future shit. I feel like those get mentioned every time somebody talks about 80s movies. I love 80s movies. I've seen Ghostbusters 47 times. You don't love 80s movies if you haven't seen Up the Creek. I'm saying it right now. The gauntlet has been thrown down. You don't have to love Up the Creek as much as me. There's going to be variability in what we like. I might like something you don't like and vice versa. But the fact is, if you are as ignorant as I once was about Up the Creek, then how are you going to tell me that you're an 80s movie fan because you've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because you bought Pretty in Pink on Blu-ray and 4K? Get the fuck out of here. You're watching the most surface level of the 80s movies, and movies like Up the Creek get swept aside and forgotten. And it's a goddamn shame, because Up the Creek is such a charming film. It features Tim Matheson from Animal House in the lead role as Bob McGraw. He is the penultimate college slacker, even though he was like 37 when he made this movie. He looks old enough to play one of the professors. Look at that shit. Look at them crow's feet. Bob McGraw is something of a precursor character for Jeremy Piven's perennial undergrad character in PCU. About a decade later, PCU comes out, and of course, Jeremy Piven is also way too old to be playing a college senior. Even a college senior would be 23, 24, something like that. But so they have to write the character like he's been in college for the last 13 years, and that's why he's so fucking old. It's mentioned in Up the Creek in the opening of the film that Bob McGraw, Tim Matheson's character, has been enrolled and subsequently removed, expelled from something like 16 universities prior to his enrollment at Le Petomane University in Up the Creek. So they sort of, in kind of an underhanded way, explain why this guy looks so fucking like he doesn't look like a 24-year-old. He doesn't. He doesn't look like. I love Tim Matheson. I love him in this movie. It's not a slight against him to say he looks like he's 37. It just is what it is. And I think casting Tim Matheson as a college undergrad really should not have worked, not even remotely. It shouldn't. I mean, look at that pick. But it does. It works. I'm here to tell you it shouldn't, but it does. He was about 30 when he made Animal House. Tim Matheson was Otter in Animal House. If you don't know that, smack yourself in the face for me. Do it for me, because I don't know where you are in the world, but give yourself one good one across the cheek for me. He's Otter in Animal House. And so he was playing, 22, 23, maybe 24 in Animal House. That's a bit of a stretch, but it's not too bad. But here in Up the Creek, he's 37 playing who the fuck knows, because his character looks every fucking bit of 37. I'm guessing that he's playing probably late 20s, I guess, college slacker that's kind of, been around, been kicked out of many universities, so he's a little bit older, but there's no explaining why he's a college undergrad living apparently in a dorm at 37 years old. There's just really no way to explain that. Like if he was a single mom and he went back to school nights, okay, I believe that. But, the guy being full-time enrolled college senior living in a dorm at 37 fucking years old, I don't know, man. Maybe you should be added to a predator list for that. But I think it would have been easy to write his character as like a slacker postgraduate fellow or something like that. Now that I think about it, he doesn't have to be an undergrad student. He just has to be a student at Le Petomane or somehow enrolled. So a postgraduate student would have probably jived with his like biological actor age a little bit more. It would have matched the crow's feet a little bit better. And it still would have given the character a reason to be associated with Le Petomane University. It would have jived with his older appearance. But I think actually Tim Matheson as an actor and his maturity works in the favor of the Bob McGraw character in Up the Creek. I think casting a younger actor in this role, I think they had considered Steve Guttenberg actually in the role of Bob McGraw instead. But Steve Guttenberg was like, peace, I'm going to do Police Academy, which I think came out like 2 weeks before Up the Creek hit theaters. So Steve Guttenberg, I don't think I have to look him up. I think he's a little bit younger than Tim Matheson, but regardless, I think Tim Matheson was perfect. Like I said, it shouldn't have worked on paper. It fucking worked in reality, because Bob McGraw is an unflappable and charismatic protagonist. And I love unflappable characters like this one. Like, he never really seems to be all that bothered. Even when he gets jumped and gets his ass kicked by like four other dudes, he just seems to be like above all the petty motivations of those antagonists. And he already knows he's getting the girl. He keeps his cool, or even when he's manic and he's trying to get back at the Ivy League antagonist kids. Like, he just always keeps his cool no matter what happens. That character's unflappable, and he's wildly charismatic. And I mean, I think that's Tim Matheson. And so he's a lot of fun as the anchor in Up the Creek, because it seems like no matter what he encounters through that film, he's very self-assured. He's very self-confident, and whatever happens, happens. It's going to be fine. Bob McGraw is a slacker. On paper, he's a loser. He's not even particularly handsome or well-groomed. I mean, it's not a slight against Tim Matheson either. He's not Brad Pitt, right? I mean, he's not ugly. He's not a wildebeest, but he's not one of these conventionally handsome, chiseled jaw, cleft chin, Cary Grant looking motherfuckers from 1940 or something like that. I mean, he's just so completely at peace with who he is, even though he's fairly average. He's just confident with his own ability to like enjoy himself, that like all the other characters, namely the female lead, are drawn to him. Like, he doesn't even really have to work that hard to get the girl, simply because she can tell like this guy's a good time. Like, he's going to be fun to hang out with, and he works the charisma to make that happen. So he has this hedonic kind of slacker magnetism that I've witnessed like once or twice in real life. I've actually seen this happen where, pretty average looking dude is able to like really like talk to some quite good looking girls. And I am talking about myself. Bob is happy to woo the aforementioned female lead, the lovely Heather Merriweather. She's played by Jennifer Runyon, but his character is also confident enough to not really fear rejection. It's clear that he wouldn't be bothered if she decided she didn't want to talk to him, she didn't want to go out with him or whatever. If she didn't want to have anything to do with him, it's just a nice bonus that she does. And so obviously he pursues it, but you'd also just get the idea that he's like going through life. And maybe part of that is the slacker aspect of the character. And in that case, it's really well realized that he's happy enough to float through. It's like the Up the Creek thing is a metaphor for these slacker characters just kind of floating through their life. Of course, they don't really float down the river. I mean, in some cases they float, but there's an awful lot of rapids as well. Also, I spent a good minute, like a long minute, wondering why Jennifer Runyon looked so familiar, because I saw her face and I was like, damn it, where have I seen her before? And it came to me after about a minute. She played Dr. Peter Venkman's student in Ghostbusters the same year that she made Up the Creek. Those two movies were both released in 84. And so as a character, Heather Merriweather feels well suited for Bob. She seems to have a similar kind of easygoing, easy breezy disposition. There's no real indication that she's a slacker like Bob. So it's not like she's a mirror of him. I think more she's like a good foil. They fit together really well. She's from a different university. Technically she's a competitor in this river race that they're on, and yet their chemistry is really great. They get along great, and they wind up over the course of the film becoming teammates, I guess, by circumstance. They wind up becoming teammates instead of rivals on the river. And you can tell that they're much more comfortable operating in that space. Like, there's no indication that Bob wanted to compete with her at all. He was really just about sleeping with her some more. Like, hey, let me hit that again. Why not? I think he even says something like that. He has a line where he's like,
I'd like to think I could jump on you again sometime.
what a ridiculous way to say goodbye to somebody. But it's also the type of dialogue that like made me laugh and brought a smile to my face throughout this thing. Like, he's very honest with her. Like, if I see you again, you want to bang again? That would be cool with me. And then he runs out. It's just a very enjoyable film for how like breezy that type of interaction really is, and how it's delivered so like casually, and it's very, very funny. So I would say the character of Heather matches him well because she also seems to be a bit above the action unfolding around her. There's a lot of crazy antics going on. There's a lot of stuff exploding, the river getting blown up, shit like that. People trying to sabotage the other boats and possibly in a way that could be lethal. But she still seems like, even with all of that going on, she's there for the vibes. It's pretty cool. And so maybe not as much as Bob, but nonetheless, she seems like she's more there for the chill, the vibe, than being like laser focused on this river race. For example, in the scene where she's introduced, she's actually punched like right in the face by one of the antagonists named Rex, who's like her ex-boyfriend. She was like dumping him.
You stinking.
And for some reason, she's not mad at Bob for ducking the punch and resulting in her getting hit. She doesn't even really seem that mad about getting hit at all. She's already pissed at Rex for cheating on her, and she's dumping his ass. So she's like equally, like she's as mad after the punch as she was before getting punched. So she mostly kind of brushes it off. She's like telling him she's done with him. And when it's mentioned again later on that Rex punched Heather, it's just Bob bringing it back up again to taunt Rex about like beating women and being like a woman beater and stuff like that, when it was clear that Rex was trying to punch him and never actually meant to strike a woman. Jennifer is well cast here too. I think Jennifer was like 23 or 24 when she made Up the Creek. So she's much closer in age to an actual college student, and she's an attractive blonde. It works for this film, but she's not a bombshell. I mean, she's not one of the 80s. I mean, people don't look back on the 80s and talk about Jennifer Runyon in the same sentence that they mentioned Phoebe Cates or Kathy Ireland or something like that. But I think it works here that she's not a supermodel who's like inexplicably involved in this river race. Like, why would the supermodel even be competing in this river race? And like, even more explicably, why would the supermodel looking ultra like 10 out of 10 fall for the charming yet too old and not super attractive slacker? So I mean, I think really casting Jennifer Runyon, it's not like she's unattractive, guys, but by casting her and not like Phoebe Cates or Kathy Ireland or somebody who's like fucking amazing, like supermodel bombshell, that's sort of culturally we look back and say, yeah, that was like top 5 hottest girl of the 80s. I think by casting a girl who's very, very pretty, she doesn't look weird being in a river race. She doesn't look weird being associated with Bob as a protagonist. So they make a fun couple. They're both very charming and endearing characters as kind of the anchor to this movie. They make it a lot of fun. The antagonists in Up the Creek are all like waspy Ivy League types, blonde hair, blue eyes, super crackers, pampered, Sperry-wearing motherfuckers born with a silver spoon to rich yet indifferent parents. You can tell a lot of 80s films, they're the type of antagonists that you see. They're the athletic, sporty, handsome, rich, they got everything going for them type that you just love to hate when they act like shitheels. I think the main crime of these antagonists, besides punching Jennifer Runyon in the face, is that they care about the river race. I mean, they care so much about winning that they're willing to cheat. Like, they're uptight yuppies that just want to win this race, compared to our like chill bohemian protagonists that are like, hey, we're here for the vibe. We're kind of being forced into this, but we're going to keep our cool the whole time. Whereas the waspy ass cracker antagonists are just monster tard douchebags the whole time, and they're very fun to hate. I mean, they're effective antagonists in that they've got very punchable faces, and you do want to see bad things happen to them. The side characters are all pretty fun too. The character of Gonzer is played by the late Stephen Furst. I think he passed in 2017, 2018, something like that. Stephen Furst also starred in Animal House along with Tim Matheson. So there's some really excellent fat shaming of his character near the beginning of the movie. I love some good fat shaming in an old movie like this, because it's like you wouldn't put that in a modern movie, but you go back and watch some old movie and like, yeah, you're so fat because you eat all this bullshit. Yeah, man, you should stop thinking about being so fat from eating all that bullshit, you know?
Did you realize what you're doing to your body? That stuff's gonna kill you. I mean, maybe not today and maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of your life. Guys, your body's your temple. If you don't worship it, who will? And God, your temple's starting to resemble the Astrodome.
Hey, Max is right, kid. Get rid of that shit.
Come on, Gonzer. Show food is boss. Throw it out the window.
Gonzer! 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 Gonzer!
It's great. Every single character is also drinking alcohol while shaming him for eating crappy food. So there's a little bit of irony there too, that they're like all holding Bloody Marys, and they're shaming him for having a fucking tuna sub. Bob McGraw is even drinking while driving while he fat shames Gonzer. So it's like, oh, how could you eat a ice cream? Meanwhile, I'm fucking chugging a whole bunch of vodka and a Bloody Mary mix and shit like that while driving. I love it. So the details like that feel kind of like a sign of the times. It's stuff that wouldn't fly nowadays. You're not going to show characters drinking and driving nowadays. You're not going to fat shame, even if it's kind of a casual detail in this film. Like, it's something that they could take out. It's a bit of a gag because they fat shame him into throwing his food out the window. It hits a motorcycler who then you don't really see how far he winds up falling. So I like to imagine he survived. But at any rate, it's set up for a gag that could easily be removed because it doesn't have any bearing on the actual story of the film. But I think despite some of the things that I mentioned, such as the profuse drinking and fat shaming, and there's some titty shots, there's some topless shots as well, I still think Up the Creek is a mostly a pretty safe film. I mean, it's not something I would watch with children because, like I said, there's some titties, there's some smoking, there's a lot of drinking, there's general bad behavior, drinking, swearing, sex, nudity, but it's all consensual, it's all above board. So when characters have sex in this film, it's all like they're conscious and awake and they agree to it. So you can't look back on this with a modern eye and think, oh, that guy, he's a misogynist and he took advantage of this girl and she'd had too much to drink, whatever. It all seems very okay, even by today's day and age, at least all of the sexual content, maybe not the fat shaming, but the sexual content is all pretty like okay by today's standards of consent. I know there's some older films out there. Animal House is one of them. Porky's is one of them. One of the side characters was also in Porky's. And so I think this film invariably invites comparison to films like Animal House and Porky's. And I have several times read online people describe Up the Creek as a teen sex comedy.
College students competing in a whitewater raft race in Up the Creek, the latest entry in the teenage sex comedy sweepstakes.
First of all, it's based around college characters. These are like college seniors. So these would be like 23, 24-year-old characters at the youngest. Tim Matheson's character is obviously a lot older than that. I think his character is meant to be closer to the 30-ish age range. So the teenage thing is out the window entirely. And a teen sex comedy, for me, the teen sex comedy is a bunch of teenagers, 16, 17, 18. They don't know what pussy is because they've never had it before. And over the course of the movie, they try to find out what pussy is like. That's a teen sex comedy to me. Porky's, I think, counts. Something more recent like American Pie, I think also kind of carries that lineage forward. And that qualifies as a teen sex comedy because you've got a bunch of inexperienced protagonists that are trying to discover, it's part of their like rite of passage as teenagers. They're trying to discover and explore their own sexuality. It involves them getting laid, to put it brusquely. This movie does not involve people going on any sense of self-discovery. There's no self-discovery. All the characters are having fun. None of the characters are teenagers. Yes, there is some sex. Yes, there are some naked girls, particularly in the hot tub scenes with the douchebag antagonist, waspy cracker dudes. There is some titties, of course, but I don't think that necessarily makes it a sex comedy, because I think when you go into a sex comedy, you're expecting a certain type of thing that Up the Creek absolutely does not deliver. So I think it's a disservice to Up the Creek to describe it as a teen sex comedy, because only the comedy part applies. I think Up the Creek is a zany 80s comedy that has a strong romantic subplot with the two main characters, that also has like some wacky hijinks, maybe similar to some of the wacky hijinks in Animal House, but minus a lot of the sex stuff. So yes, characters have sex in this film. Characters have sex in a lot of films. That doesn't mean you describe those as a teen sex comedy because they have sex in a movie like The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Yeah, people have sex in The 40-Year-Old Virgin. It's not a teen sex comedy because there's no teenage. It's more of a sex comedy than Up the Creek is, because at least a 40-year-old virgin is a virgin. Steve Carell's character is trying to go through that rite of passage, albeit a few decades late. So 40-year-old virgin is more of a sex comedy than Up the Creek is. So I think the big thing about Up the Creek is it feels like a hodgepodge of some of the like 80s movie zeitgeist. You're going to see some things that have since become cliched. I mean, in 1984, when Up the Creek was made, I don't think these things were cliched yet. Maybe some of these things were just beginning to become like used and overused, but the stuff that we look back on now as like, this is a stereotype of 80s comedies, I don't think Up the Creek is quite that self-aware. Like some later productions of the 80s, like the high 80s stuff, 88, 89, tends to be a little bit more self-aware. I think by 88, 89, when you're making a movie, you kind of understand what the culture, you've been through enough of the 80s to look back and understand how some of that culture is going to be defined. You know, it's by 88, 89, you know, it's Michael Jackson, it's Madonna, it's, you know the styles and the music and the cultural zeitgeist of Reaganism and stuff like that. But I think in 84, you're still early enough in the 80s that they're not like calling their shots like Babe Ruth. But I still think that because it was part of that mid 80s zeitgeist, there are some things that are maybe trends of contemporary films. Like Ferris Bueller, it has a charismatic 80s slacker type dude who's just kind of a devil may care type of character in Tim Matheson's Bob McGraw. Like Revenge of the Nerds, it has super waspy shitheel bad guys going up against these like scrappy underdogs who win despite not standing a chance. It also makes me reflect on One Crazy Summer. That's a little later 80s. I think that's 88, but there is that regatta race that they have towards the end of that film. And, the waspy kids have the silver spoon and they have all the resources. So their boat is really super nice, but the scrappy underdogs led by John Cusack's character have to pull everything together and construct a boat out of a box of scraps in a cave like Tony fucking Stark. Somehow they managed to create this boat and pull it out, and they managed to win. The scrappy underdogs managed to win. So you saw a lot of that in the 80s, the scrappy underdog kind of coming from behind. Nobody thought they could win it. They win it. It has a similar kind of lovable losers vibe as Meatballs. I know Meatballs is not an 80s film, but it was released in the late 70s, a few years before Up the Creek came out. So it certainly would have been in the zeitgeist at the time that they were making Up the Creek. So it does, I think it does tie in with some other 80s movies, but you see, I'm not comparing it to teen sex stuff with lots of TNA and lots of fan service type of titty shots and bush and butt. There's not a lot of that. Even the titty shots in this movie are pretty quick, like almost blink and you'd miss the tits in this movie, but it's not even really what you're looking for. I'm having so much fun watching the characters in this film that even when a lady runs across the screen with no shirt on, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, there were titties in that movie, but I almost forgot that there were titties in the movie because I was just having so much fun with the story and the characters and the comedy. So it's just such a fun movie all around, Up the Creek. And moreover, I really think that the Kino Blu-ray looks phenomenal. I don't say that a lot about a lot of Kino Blu-rays, but I was shocked. I was not expecting it to look this good. And it's both the restoration as well as the way this film was shot. It was shot on location. It looks far better than it has any right to. It was shot on location in Colorado on the Deschutes River, and they managed to get some shots like on the river that really like capture the natural kind of rugged beauty of that space in a way that like really, come on, Up the Creek. It's a dumb comedy from the mid 80s about a dude. It has no right to look as good as it does in some of its shots. Some of the naturalistic shots on the river look really fucking good and looks really clean. It's a really clean, really good looking Blu-ray. That's a cherry on top, in my opinion. Now, most of the action does occur outdoors. So the fact that they shot on location is actually a plus. Maybe they got lucky, but I think that by and large, like visually, it looks as good as any 80s comedy and maybe better than some. I think, in fact, Stephen Furst in an interview said that it snowed in May on their first day of filming. I think he said that, or that there was snow and it was melting. I don't know. It's wild. But at the same time, as I praise the Kino release, I also think the Kino release, in terms of special features, criminally underserved, okay? Such a lack of special features. There's one little making of featurette that's about 15 minutes long, and then there is the music video for the Cheap Trick song that they wrote for this film. I'll get back to that in a second. I can safely say that I have never been swayed, in my opinion, on a film by the critical consensus, right? What a critic has said online, Rotten Tomatoes, nothing. Chicago Tribune, I don't give a fuck. You can look back at any of my videos, and not once have I given a flying fuck through a rolling donut what a critic thinks about a movie. I love plenty of movies that aren't well regarded by critics. Cough, cough, Grandma's Boy, cough. However, I will say that there are some instances where critical opinion coincides with my own. I would call this the critics getting it right for once, or even a blind squirrel gets a nut now and then. After I had completed all of my notes for this review, I went back to see what Roger Ebert had thought of Up the Creek. I was surprisingly vindicated by his reaction.
Now we come to a movie named Up the Creek, and this is the kind of movie where every instinct that you've developed over long and rugged years on the movie beat tells you this is going to be one of the worst experiences of your life sitting through this film. But this movie surprised me. It's funny. I liked it. I found myself laughing out loud a lot. Well, you get the idea there. Up the Creek is goofy, silly, vulgar, and immature, and that's why I liked it. It has the highest spirits of any dumb Animal House ripoff in a long time.
And one's for you, Roger Ebert. You're not such a bag of limp dick after all. Let me just say a word now before I end about the soundtrack, which includes music by Heart, the Beach Boys, and Cheap the Fuck Trick on the title song Up the Creek. Holy shit. The Cheap Trick title song absolutely fucking slap boxes your titties to make them jiggle. I swear to God, this song is fucking awesome. Cheap Trick cut the track during their early to late 80s career lull. Cheap Trick rose to prominence in the 70s. They had some big hits. They were hot shit. And then the 80s roll around and it felt like the world had moved on. Michael Jackson's a thing now. Thriller is a thing now. Madonna's coming out. Get the fuck out of here, Cheap Trick. So, I feel like they made the song really kind of out of necessity at this point in their career. And I think that led Rick Nielsen, he's one of the founding members of Cheap Trick and also the writer of the song. It led Rick Nielsen to later talk shit about his song Up the Creek, and he talks about how bad it was, but I think he is dead wrong. He could not be more wrong. And I know he's the writer. So yeah, he should be right about his own song. He's fucking wrong. He's so fucking wrong about his own song. He doesn't know dick about shit about his own music. I know more than he does about his music, clearly. Up the Creek is an absolute fucking banger of an earworm. It reinforces how pervasively good 80s music is. In closing, if you haven't seen Up the Creek, you shouldn't be ashamed. Maybe you slap yourself one more time on the face for me, but you need to fix it ASAP. Go fix it. Go see Up the Creek. If you claim that you love 80s comedies, like I said before, but you haven't seen Up the Creek, I'm taking your 80s comedy fan card back. I'm taking it with me. I'm cutting it up until you get right with Jesus and watch Up the Creek. So you really only have two options at this point. Go watch Up the Creek or go fuck yourself. I love you. Peace.